now have the earth, which simply means a conference of this nature should then come up with solutions to make this world a wonderful world. I'm trying to think, there is a song of that title, What a Wonderful World. Mr. Khomeswana can help me. Who is the artist? Yes, what a wonderful world. And indeed, this conference must make our world to become even more wonderful. I thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Prof. Madachi, for this engaging and encouraging speech. Thank you so much. I just first wanted to tell you about the miracles we had during the time since I've known Prof. Manderson, is the lady over there. So I think the first real miracle was that the Science Center, or the Science Education Center, has been totally overdone. It's a brand new building, and our technical services teams have really came in and done a marvelous job. So that is the first miracle. With that, I just want to invite Prof. Mampuru, who is the Dean of the Faculty of Science and Agriculture, to just come and give a brief welcome. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you very much, Annelise. Good afternoon, colleagues. It's always difficult to speak after your boss has spoken. And I don't want to besmirch his welcome address. All protocol observed. Thanks very much, Professor Madachi, for that wonderful speech or welcoming address. And I think we should take you into the faculty. We have to take you away from the languages, because you actually have covered the essence of the whole event in a brief moment that you were given that opportunity. So mine, colleagues, is just on behalf of the faculty management and the Faculty of Science and Agriculture, academic staff, and everybody involved, to welcome you officially into the Faculty of Science and Agriculture. We as a faculty, colleagues, indeed for us, this event marks a huge milestone in the annals of our academic calendar. And I know when the local organizing committee was making arrangements under the co-chairperson of Mr. Marre and Ms. Potgieter, there were some teething problems here and there that we needed to overcome. And indeed, we managed to salvage the situation. It was not easy, and thanks to the local organizing committee for that. And the event now is becoming a huge success. And of course, the directors of the two schools, Professor Mafeu, who's the director of the School of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences, and the director of the School of Physical and Mineral Sciences, Professor Jauke. Thanks for the leadership that you have shown in ensuring that this event becomes a success that is becoming. And of course, our international colleagues, Professor Manderson and Professor Moye. Thanks for the constant, interaction with the local organizing committee to ensure that this event becomes a success, and thanks very much. So without belaboring the points that I'm trying to make here, colleagues, mine is just to welcome everybody to this August faculty, and let's enjoy the deliberations. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prof. Mampuru. Yeah, let me tell you about quickly. This is now the second miracle, second one, I think. During this time that we have been working really hard to get the building into place and, everything perfect for the conference, I've seen at the university people that sort of never worked together, suddenly worked together, and all the departments of the university that assisted us was just remarkable. And I just want to say thanks to our management for the faculty and the university. But I haven't stopped smiling at the state of the Science Center and the Science Education Center, because that's the place where we nurture the young of the country. And we have great passion for that, and we want to give them the best. So, yes, that's the next miracle. Okay, let's go on. I just want to introduce Prof. Lenore Manderson, who is a distinguished professor at the University of the Witwatersrand, and she is in health and medical anthropology. Oh, my words are leaving me today, sorry. And then she has written so many books. You can really go out there and find them. Yes, so thank you so much for choosing us for this last leg of the four conferences. It was really a good time. Thank you, Prof. Manderson.
Eileen, why don't you come up with me and we'll do this together rather than being introduced separately. So this whole program began with Eileen Moyer, who's Professor of Anthropology and Climate Change at the University of Amsterdam, and me and us together bringing in a number of people, including Colleen Vogel, who's here, Andres Bezuidenhout, who's still having lunch perhaps. I can't see him. If you're here, Andres, wave your hand. No.
He's been called out.
He's been called out, okay. Marius Marais from University of Limpopo, and others. So, and through Marius we met Annalise. So as you can hear already, this has been a rich collaboration across universities dealing with challenges when I wasn't in South Africa of time differences as well as everything else. I want Eileen to say a few words about the project as a whole, and then I'll just say very few words, and then we'll move on to the keynote, because I realise we're now, earlier time was standing between you and food, now we're standing between you and a keynote that obviously looks like it's going to be extraordinary.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't want to follow that keynote. And I have to get something to put on my head to get your attention. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Lenore, for your introduction. Welcome, everyone, to Imagining Futures, the final dissemination workshop for our Eco-Imagining project. I want to begin by expressing my sincere thanks to NVO, the Dutch Research Council, and the National Research Foundation here in South Africa This 4-year project would not have existed, obviously, without their generous support throughout. I also want to warmly thank our host here at the University of Limpopo. Lenore will say, or was that your thank you? Here I say, Lenore will thank everyone properly after me, but you will do that. But I do want to really especially thank the senior members of university management who came out today to listen to what we've been up to for the last 4 years. It really means a lot to us, and especially, I think, to Marius Murray and Annelies Potgieter and her colleagues at the Science Institute. As you can hear, they're already referring to it as a miracle. So that's something quite impressive. The amount of, I always say unpaid labor, although that's kind of the way it works in academia, the amount of unpaid labor that you've put into getting things ready over the last few months has really been impressive and phenomenal. And yeah, I'm just really grateful and also proud to be here and to see all the work that you've done. From the beginning, this project, Eco-Imagining, has been future-focused. We set out to work with individuals and communities to understand what inspires future imaginings on a warming planet where ecologies are threatened and where the resources of water, energy, and food are increasingly insecure, and also targeted by governments. We just heard the reference to war, by governments who seemingly are more interested in maintaining their power than building the infrastructures or maintaining the infrastructures that are required for sustainable and just futures. At the heart of this consortium was a question of how do we bring the arts together with the social sciences to inform scientific and technical processes around water, energy, and food security. That question has animated everything that we've done, and you will see it come to life throughout these days. One example is an illustrated book on water, energy, and food that we will launch later this afternoon. That this really is one of the ways we've tried to translate our findings so that they are accessible and understandable to learners so that we can help support the next generation. And for me, that book's particularly, it's a layering of collaborations over time, including that we'll have an interpretive performance of the book later today for those of us who won't get a chance to read it. And I think this beautifully illustrates what we mean when we talk about using arts and science in combination to reach and inspire wider audiences, and especially young people. You will see more of this vision if you manage to make your way down the hill to the newly spruced up Science Center over the coming days, where Lenore has worked with the UL team to put together an extraordinary exhibition that visualizes our project's work in a way that makes it accessible even to the most technically minded, showing how water, energy, and food play out in people's everyday lives on the ground. I want to say one small thing that I feel strongly about. As a university professor, I think it's a bit of a cop-out when people say we should simply look to the youth to secure the future. As someone in my mid-50s, I believe it's just as much up to those of us in the older generation and every generation to work towards building a better future together. And yet, it's not a coincidence that our final workshop, we are focused on the future, and we're doing so by involving so many young people and targeting so many young people with our messages. Since Monday, we have already been running teacher trainings in STEM and STEAM, bringing the arts into science and technology, as well as a podcast media training for honors, masters, and PhDs and postdocs to encourage them to translate their findings for wider audiences. The teacher training is designed to equip science teachers with creative, imaginative methods for the classroom. And I also want to acknowledge two of our colleagues in this project who I believe really embody this idea of looking towards the youth. One is Professor Colleen Vogel, who never tires, to the point where sometimes we do this, of reminding us that we have to involve young people meaningfully at every step, that giving them a stage and genuinely listening to them is not optional, but it's essential. And Professor Andries Bezuidenhout, who is so committed to his students that he drove a van full of them all the way up from Fort Hare to participate in this week's activities. For me, that kind of dedication says everything. The young, yeah. Yay, Prof. The young researchers and students we have worked with, they really do embody our hopes for the future, but they cannot do it alone. They need those of us in positions of power to take responsibility for the disruptive planetary conditions that we have created and honor our obligations to that next generation. I do want to also flag, because no one's really mentioned it so far, what's happening Saturday, which after the official program, we will be running a series of what we're calling play shops instead of workshops from learners in the area, right here at the Science Center. The sessions will take up the themes of water pollution and ecology, strategic land use, and media and youth community advocacy, all under this broad umbrella of WEF Futures. And finally, before I hand over to Lenore, I want to say something directly to her and to all of you, which is that none of this week would happen without Lenore's tireless dedication, her vision, and her imagination. When we were developing the idea for this consortium, which took place in those cloudy COVID days on a Zoom call, the core question was how to bring the arts into dialogue with the social sciences to inform science and technical processes. And although I've always been inspired by the arts myself, it really is Lenore who has the vision of how to make this happen and the knowledge and the skill to make it real for all of us. You will see that in the next presentation as we talk about the science and the arts, and you'll also see a great deal more of that in the Science Center. So I've been very grateful to work alongside you. I'm going to cry. It's the end of our project. And it's generally thrilling to be here to see what's been built and to be part of an event that brings real attention to this important work. Thank you.
Eileen did thank people from the university, both within senior management and people from the Department of Geography and Environmental Sciences and people from the Science Education Centre. And I won't keep us further away. I'm very mindful of the fact that time is our enemy right now. So I just want to actually talk about that, having acknowledged again those departments and the people who were both the heads of the department and foot soldiers within those departments and other helpers, but particularly Marius, Annelies and Sandile and Izelka, thank you also, and those of you who are from the senior management, thank you enormously for your commitment. The Vice-Chancellor unfortunately could not open this, but he did come over this morning to apologise. He had been called down to Pretoria, and for those of you who are from university systems in South Africa, you will realise that one cannot say to Pretoria, no. So unfortunately he's not here. He will join us tomorrow or the next day and see what we have done in terms of exhibition and intellectual work at the centre. So just very briefly, so you know what's going to happen, including the people who are involved, Annelies will briefly introduce the person to introduce the keynote speaker properly. Graham then does the keynote, and after about an hour we might look a bit anxious if it's going on, but he's got plenty of time and plenty of toys to demonstrate to you, to inspire you. Following that, we go straight into an arts science panel with a number of people in this room, and then straight after that we will launch the book, the teaching book called Water, Energy and Food, A Nexus for Life. After that, we will go out and grab something to eat or drink, which is the reception component, and that is when the dance performance will take place. So we have a full afternoon. I thank you very much for being here and for showing your interest in it, and that does include Tim and Matthijs for coming from Amsterdam, and I haven't inquired whether you flew straight down or had to go some safer, circuitous route, but other people in Europe have certainly been challenged by what is happening in the world today. The beginning of the impetus of this project was not water, energy and food, it was about ensuring resources to maintain the world, and climate change is clearly part of that. And as the Deputy Vice-Chancellor has pointed out, so are threats to world peace, which will exacerbate access to food and energy and presumably pollute the waters in the process. Annalise, back to you briefly for the next MC component, but again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Lenore. It was really interesting, and thank you, Eileen. Yes, there's so many miracles, I can't even remember them anymore. But anyway, you know, everything that we wanted to bring in and that we wanted to do, Lenore is enthusiastic and she listens to you, and then she works very hard to work on you so that you can implement. So, which was tiresome but amazing. So, yes, and then the next keynote speaker is one of the other miracles. And I am asking Prof. Maffeo to come and introduce him. Thank you, Prof.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here to introduce the keynote speaker, Dr. Graham Walker. Professor Madashe, when I was requested to do this particular task, I wandered around in terms of thinking what was Walker. Walker is his surname, and I wanted to understand the surname in my language. I realized that it means Motsamai, a man who walks throughout the world. And as I was preparing his this bio, I went into his university where he's based, with the information that I also got from the Professor Manderson. And as I was preparing, I actually realized that indeed the name Walker is indeed a person who walks a lot and making a lot of changes in the life of many people. So you will hear, as I'm going to read through his bio here, that indeed this man is a real walker, is a real Motsamai. Dr. Walker will give us an address on the topic hands-on climate connection. That's what he's going to address us on. And when you look at his bio, Dr. Walker is a science communication teacher, a researcher, a practitioner based at the National Center for Public Awareness of Science at Australian National University. And he's also responsible for postgraduate coursework. Dr. Walker, he works at the interface of science communication, informal STEM learning, capacity building and co-development, emotion and motivation, and communication of social and environmental issue, particularly in an informal learning context, like science centers, science shows, hands-on workshop. Dr. Walker has been involved in science communication building throughout the Asia Pacific our continent, and the Middle East since 2003. As you go through his bio, it indicates that he founded Science Circus Africa, which through dynamic partnership with African organization, to date he has managed to train more than 500 staff and reached 73,000 people in 10 African countries. Indeed, the man walks. He is a devoted adherent of Science Show, and he has performed shows and delivered training globally. For the benefit of those who are familiar with one of our program in our faculty, we have got a program, Diploma in Science Communication. Professor Madaje, this man is one of those few colleagues, international colleagues, who made us realize that particular qualification. He contributed a lot when that particular program was built. Even after the program was approved through the university systems, he was amongst those who helped us to realize the first cohort in terms of training. Hence, that number of 73,000 people that he has involved in their training in terms of science communication. His research interests are mainly in science centers and informal science learning methods, such as Science Show, hands-on workshop, interactive exhibits, and making and tinkering. Another interest area for Dr. Hoka is the application of informal science learning methods to socio-scientific issues such as climate, environment, and health. He's also involved in terms of researching on the emotion, motivation in science communication and informal science learning. Lastly, Dr. Hoka is involved in science communication capacity building, training, international development, and cross-cultural co-design, especially in Africa, the Pacific, and Asia. Dr. Hoka, please, you are welcome to South Africa. You are welcome to Limpopo province at the University of Limpopo. I'm inviting you to give your address. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Do I sound loud? Good, I can't tell from here. Thank you for that tremendously warm introduction. I'm touched. I'm indeed a man that walks, and there is nothing more valuable than you can share your culture with someone else. So thank you. I'm honoured. Oh. Huh? Yeah. It's... Oh. Ah. Hi. Ah. Now you can hear me. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to the technical team. So I am going to talk about hands-on climate connections, and you're probably wondering. Are you wondering what all these things are? Oh, that is good, because curiosity, it's a great emotion. It's an emotion we can do so much with. So today I'm going to talk to you and share with you the power of hands-on approaches, particularly when we address things like climate change and energy is what I'm going to focus on today. These are the same kind of methods that are used at the Science Education Centre here at the University of Limpopo, and a big shout out to Annalise and the team. They've been wonderful. They've worked tremendously hard to bring all this together. So I'm going to talk about hands-on methods that are incredibly engaging for young people, hopefully for a whole range of people, and I'm going to talk about how these hands-on methods can really create avenues for youth and for everyone to take action on climate change, and how these hands-on methods can be part of youth playing a real role, a genuine role, true participation in the energy transition as we move, hopefully, as a globe, but at least as countries, from fossil fuel power through to renewable power. And we'll see that journey through the hands-on experiments today. I'm also going to talk about ways that these kind of methods can empower youth, okay? Build their agency, and how a hands-on method can be a pathway to actually taking action in the real world, because that is the end game. So today I'm going to talk to you about methods that are not only very effective for learning STEM, but give us ways to take that STEM, take that learning, and actually use it to impact the world. Because really, this is as we heard in the introduction, this is what science and STEM really should be used for, if we're thinking about the ethics and morals. I'll just put this clean fuel over here. It's a little bit explosive. Okay, but clean. All right. So I'm going to talk to you about those things. A little bit about me, and could we put the slides up? Lovely. A little bit about me. Yeah, I have been the man that walks for some time, and the first place I walked to do work like this was actually your country. It's wonderful to be back. That picture you can see with far less grey hair up in the top left, that was taken in KZN, okay? Simple interactive exhibits, young people working as a group to do a simple puzzle, building critical thinking, okay? Simple items can make major impacts, and we'll see that today. They can make impacts like you see those young ladies, again taken in KZN in about 2005, using a little exhibit. What do those faces tell you? This is an interactive conversation. What do they tell you? Yeah, happiness, joy, surprise. We often look at science and think, oh, it is robust, it's rigorous, okay? You know, it doesn't have feelings. It's not it is, an objective pursuit. But it's also a human pursuit. And that means it's a pursuit full of emotions, full of motivation, full of human interactions. And I'm going to pick up on those things today. I've been blessed to reach large numbers of children. Again, that's in KZN, working with the learners there. And the joy of taking that round and working with different partners right across Africa, Southern and East Africa, through Science Circus Africa. And that is a travelling exhibition that we built together with an orphanage in Botswana, and we did that in many other countries. We leave the materials there, we leave the knowledge, we share our cultures, as we heard before, and we bring STEM to places that frankly need a lot more of it and do not have that access. So, on my journeys, I've come to know the real power of just simple items to do tremendous science. Little straw, okay? You can try this at home. I apologise, it's a plastic straw, okay? Might work with a paper straw, but I have many, many plastic straws. We'll use them up and at least do something good with them. Just 2 cuts like that turns it into a little trumpet. Just get a little mustache trim there as well. Now, it's entertaining and it's a great way to learn about sound and learn about science. So could we keep the slides up, please? But this is a gentleman, a teacher, in a teacher workshop. And I did this with him, and he was excited, and then he was solemn. And I thought, oh no, have I transgressed some cultural rule? This is my first time in South Africa. I was young, I was naive. And he looked at me very seriously, and he said, Graham, I understand how this flute works. He used to herd cattle when he was young. He would have a little kind of flute thing that he would play. And he connected this simple science experiment to the way his flute worked. And I thought, wow, it's just a straw, but it can unlock people's stories. It can become relevant in ways that are quite profound. And I will not forget that story. We can use very simple items to do lots of other things. I have a simple item here. I bought it at the shop right. And I'm going to need a piece of scientific equipment, very precise piece of scientific equipment to identify. Would someone like to volunteer their nose for this experiment? Anyway, this will be interactive and I will not give up. Have a little smell of that now. It is vinegar. Okay, vinegar. Okay, lovely for pickles, full of acetic acid. What I've got here is something else from the shop right, a little baking soda. Okay, sodium hydrogen carbonate. The carbonate, have we got some chemists in the room? Now, when the carbonate will react with the acid, you might be able to guess what it's going to make. Don't tell everyone else because we want to feel that surprise. It's a powerful emotion. Does anyone like to tell me the guess with me? It is carbon dioxide, okay? Only a small amount, okay? We don't want to accelerate climate change, but I thought it was, no, that bit was not comedy. But it's only a small amount. We must think about scale of these things. Now, carbon dioxide is going to be a main player in what we're going to talk about today. And before I get into that, I did want to acknowledge the wonderful connection that was brought up before. It's been a real privilege to work with the University of Limpopo team for some time. You can see Sandile from the Science Centre. We were privileged to have him and 14 other emerging leaders from South African science, or from Southern African science centres. And to put the graduate diploma together, and congratulations to everyone involved, okay? I've heard from some of the graduates, they want to come and do our master's program, and we'd love to see more of them over there. And when Sandile was over there, he would use common items, okay, to build, this was like a laser-powered sound visualizer. It's very pretty, the patterns it makes, and a nice little crossover with art. Now, these kind of hands-on methods are powerful. We've taken them all around Southern and East Africa, using simple items. This is a teacher workshop in Lilongwe, in Malawi. What I'm burning there, just flour, okay? We can tell stories about fossil fuels using simple items like that. And you will see not only the STEM, but the joy, the emotion, the excitement, okay? So these kind of methods can be really powerful, incredibly powerful. They can be great for teaching and learning of STEM subjects and science. But as you'll see on those faces, they have a powerful emotional resonance. And when we put emotions together with our science learning, people remember more, they engage more, and they're motivated by it, okay? So what I'm going to cover in this talk today is looking at these hands-on demonstrations. Look at those faces, okay? I love working with emotions as a metric, because your face, it doesn't lie like you can on a survey, okay? You see the impact that you make. What I'm going to talk to you about today is how we can take these methods, these hands-on methods using simple items, and we can turn them to making real-world impact around things like climate change and energy, and indeed food, water, the other things we're talking about today. I'm going to talk through the contents of a recent paper. Okay, it's open access, as all things should be, and it actually lays out 5 different principles for how we can actually use hands-on activities in this kind of space around climate and energy. And I focus around energy because often people are much happier to talk about energy. As we heard, we all need it. Certainly in Australia, there are places where you don't want to lead a conversation with climate change if you want people to truly engage. So energy, it's something we all need. It's a good frame to talk about climate. So our first principle is looking at relevance, okay? One of the things about climate change, we see its impacts, but they are hard to perceive. Carbon dioxide, methane, these gases, we cannot see them with our eyes, okay? Climate change is highly, kind of intangible. It's hard to see, okay? And for this reason, it's not relevant to everyone. So to make it relevant, we can use local language, okay? We can use local contexts. We need to use examples that people can relate to, okay? If I'm talking to a group of students in Limpopo, maybe glacier melting is not the best context to talk about, okay? But I must say the teachers that we had in the workshops the past 2 days, they were very knowledgeable right across the impacts, okay? To make it relevant, we need to show how people can use these things in their everyday lives, and not just in their lives, but on a community level or a country level, and I hope one day on a global level. And most of all, if we really want things to be powerfully relevant, we need to connect with culture, and we need to connect with identity, okay? Including our Indigenous knowledge. It can play a major role in how communities adapt and mitigate climate change. Now, I want to tell you a little anecdote about relevance, and indeed this was taught to me by a South African. His name is Dumasini, okay, on the right there. And this was one of my early trips, and it was a lesson in relevance that I'd never forget, and I share with my students, and I'll share it today. On our relevance continuum, this is some work by Stacey Pruniski in the science education space. And what Stacey and her team say is that if we're going to make things relevant, we always have to make it relevant to the audience. But how do we actually, actualise that? Stacey and her team say that, we need to put it in a context that's just people's everyday life. Okay, what we call personal association. If we can build on that and show how it is useful, how people can apply these things to achieve their own goals, it becomes more meaningful and it becomes more motivational. But if we want it to be truly high impact and really motivational, we need to connect with people on that level of identification, okay? We need to go to their values, their beliefs, the things they hold dear, their culture, okay? And this is a story about that. Now, I didn't bring this experiment, but you can see on the screen there is a bowling ball swinging. Can you imagine there's a bowling ball here suspended from the roof? In this experiment, you dream the bowling ball right up to your nose and you let it go. Can you see it swinging across the room? Good. Don't miss it. Don't look at me, sir. And it's going to come back up. But because of physics, it loses a little bit of energy pushing the air out of the way. Not loses, moves that energy around. And it doesn't quite come up and hit your nose. Now, we were training Dumasini and his team, and we were doing it in English, and they were doing it in isiZulu. So I didn't know what they were talking. My Zulu was, and still is, quite limited, okay? But the kids really liked the way he presented, okay? They would laugh, they were all excited, and I thought, hey, I'm meant to be doing the training here. I'm not the expert, am I? No, we can all learn from each other. And Dumasini would not tell me what he was doing, okay? He wouldn't tell me. It took me 3 days to get this out of him. And he'd, no. They'd converse in isiZulu. After 3 days, do you know what he told me? He told me that they'd been telling the children that me and Christy, who's my colleague from Australia there, we are worried our nose is too pointy and we will not fit in with our Zulu friends. Yeah? And the kids laughed just like you, okay? And it really struck me. This is a way where he has taken this science experiment and he's placed it in a unique cultural context, and it connects with people. So relevance and connecting with people's identity and culture is something we need to do with climate change as well. Now, relevance can cut both ways. And I was reminded of this, preparing for this, with what has happened in Limpopo recently. Floods, extreme weather, things that are being accelerated by climate change, as we heard before. So relevance can cut both ways. And it is really important that we speak about the impacts of climate change, because this is one of the things that promotes action. But if we really want to promote action, we also have to provide solutions alongside that. This is a lovely activity where that we've kind of set with the teachers we worked with over the last couple of days as homework. Just using 2 little bottles, one with alfalfa and mustard growing to prevent erosion, the other without. Okay? So if we're going to show the impacts of climate change, we must also show what we can do to address it. And this is really critical when we talk to young people, because they are anxious and they are scared and they are despondent about climate change, but they also want to take action. So that is our second principle, that when we use these activities, we need to balance the impacts and risks with what we can do about it, how we can adapt, how we can mitigate, and to put it in a context that is appropriate, we need to look at the local level. Okay, if we're talking about what's happening on a global level, this can be disempowering or overwhelming for everyone, particularly young people. But we need to look at that local context, and we need to look at the near term. If we talk about what's happening in 2150, it just gets more scary. Okay, we need to think about how we communicate this in a way that it's going to be empowering. Okay. Now, let's do some demonstrations that have a look at this. Now, talking about relevance before, one of the things about burning a fossil fuel, okay, I've got some natural gas, some butane in here, it's So we try and do demonstrations that make these invisible things visible. That's where the cameraman works out. Should we do a little bit more? But you know this is a fossil fuel. But we've just made a small amount of fire and a small amount of emissions, right? That moment when you saw the fire, that is when the carbon dioxide is made. And you can see it with your eyes. Okay, I can smell it because a little of my hair is burnt. But it makes these things that are quite hard to perceive tangible. Okay? Now we need to put this in contexts that people can relate to. And when we've been working with the teachers, transport has been something that has come up a lot. Okay? We are starting to see more electric cars, but most of our cars are still powered by internal combustion engines. Okay? What shape have we got here? It's a cylinder. Okay? Just like in a car. And this is a nice little model of a car cylinder. It's got a spark plug. We're going to put some fuel in it, not petrol. We're going to use this other fossil fuel. And the unfortunate third character in this is Piston Pete. Now, Piston Pete has an unenviable job, ladies and gentlemen. Piston Pete gets to sit in there, and he has a little fire under his bottom, and that's where those emissions come from and go out down the tailpipe. So, because I'm an ethical science communicator, we're just going to put a little bit of water on Piston Pete's bottom. You'll notice there's a bit of humour, okay? I know I told you not to laugh at climate change, but you can laugh at it. Okay? Humour, that can be really powerful. You only have to look at the science in the climate strikes and things like that to realise that humour can be a powerful tool. So we're going to pop Piston Pete in there, and we're actually going to see these emissions from transport. And often when I do these experiments, people, they don't quite realise exactly what is happening in their cars. So we're going to pop our fossil fuels in here. So the fossil fuel has got all our carbon, and the oxygen from the air is going to bind onto it. That is where this carbon dioxide comes from. So these things like emissions, they're very hard to perceive. We can make them more tangible. Should we have a countdown? Yeah. 3, 2, 1. Okay. So did you see the flame? And you see the motion? Okay. We take these things that are usually invisible and we make them visible. We make them tangible and they become relevant. Okay. So we need to make it relevant, but we also need to find that balance. So we've talked about some fossil fuels. Let's look at some things that we can do to complete that story. If we're going to present problems, we need to present the solutions as well. And for young people, this is really critical. If we want to empower them and we want them to have agency, then we need to show them what they can do about this, and we need to listen to their ideas on what they think we need to do as well. Okay? We don't have any sunlight in here, but we've got a little light, and we can drive our little cars along. Okay? And we can see how renewable sources like solar and wind can be part of the solution. But we can also talk about how to responsibly make these things, how to mine the things that we need in responsible ways. We don't want to create new problems as we implement our solutions. We can also look at wind power. That's something we use a fair bit of in Australia. And we can do it in interesting ways. Now, I thought I just had a really nice meal, and there's lovely African food, and I can actually turn my food energy into my renewable energy. If I run fast enough, you should actually see, can you see the light? So we're turning my food energy into kinetic or moving energy, and then turning that into electricity we can use. One of the things I love about solar and wind is, yes, we can implement them like on a national level, but individuals and families and communities can also control these kinds of technologies in a way that fossil fuels really don't allow. So we need to have that balance. Now, the third principle I want to go through is looking at the human side of it, okay? It's really important when we do these activities that we talk about them, okay? Climate change means different things to different people, and different people care about different aspects of climate change in different ways. Having a conversation, deliberating about these things lets those different viewpoints come in, and this is really important for young people. We might have young people that are more, I guess, in tune with the arts or the sciences. All of these different disciplines have a role to play in how we respond to climate change. And discussion is a great way that we can actually bring that all together, all these different talents we're going to need to address this issue. Lovely little story of how this has played out with partners in Kenya. When we worked looking at the hands-on activities in Kenya, I said to our collaborators there, I was like, how would you do it? Okay, this is how I would do it from Australia. How would you do it? And they said, we should have a community drama. We should get the teachers to tell local stories of how climate change is impacting in their local communities. And we should use a drama, okay? Something that has cultural resonance. It is an intuitive way for people to communicate in the community. And that's what they did, okay? You can see this teacher. He's telling a story about charcoal collecting in Kenya and the impact that has. We haven't kind of crunched all the data, but I pulled out that quote on the bottom and I was like, wow, okay, it's actually doing the thing we want it to do. This is a comment about the power of drama to address local climate change issues. A very good way since learners do the drama and later transcribe the idea in the field, okay? These kinds of hands-on methods, dramas, discussions, they can underpin having agency and taking action in the real world. And this is really what I'm hoping, that as we grow this kind of thing, people don't really use hands-on methods to communicate around climate change in a way to actually impact as much as you might think. So actually taking these ideas and then seeing an impact in the world, okay? Which really is the important thing. Now, principle 4, they're all important, but I'll be honest, this one's my favourite, okay? The activities really need to evoke positive emotions. And I look around the room, I see some little grins and smiles and things, and this is really important. Because positive emotions like interest and enjoyment, they are things that motivate us, okay, intrinsically. We get an internal reward. We're not doing it for someone else's reward. So these emotions are really important to driving motivation to take action on climate change and energy. One of the things I was really chuffed as I'm reading through these kind of things is this idea of positive reappraisal. Okay, and this is some work by Maria Jawa, I think up in maybe Norway. And she talks about how you can have a positive experience around, say, climate change, and that might be watching a science show or watching a film, having a conversation, and you can kind of bank that positive vibe, and that will give you resilience for when you need to go out and do things in the world going forward. It's this idea of positive reappraisal, that we can actually go from maybe being in denial or despondent or frustrated about climate change and actually kind of switch into, I'm going to do something about this, into action mode, okay? And what I'm hoping, and in fact what we're seeing in the early data, is that these kind of approaches really can allow people to positively reappraise how they feel about climate. Because they can be really fun, okay? This is a little wind turbine. This is a workshop in Malaysia. You see these big grins, okay? He's doing a big laugh. But these kind of activities, they can give a moment of joy, a moment of positivity that is embedded in the kinds of actions that we're hoping that will happen in the real world, okay, using wind energy. And it can really get people to think quite differently. So let's try this, okay? Now, I've got a couple of things here that I really think should generate positive emotions. I like to get a lot of my props from what we call the tip shop, okay, the second-hand shop in Australia. And this is an old bubble machine I found there. And what I've got here is a generator. I think we often take energy for granted. It just comes out of the PowerPoint. It does cost something, and I know in South Africa, load shedding, things like this, you really are aware that energy can stop and start. But for a lot of young people, they don't really appreciate that. This little generator, you actually got to make the energy yourself. I'm going to turn my food into my kinetic energy. emotions is, of course, anything involving marshmallows. Okay? Do you want one? Okay. This is good. It's all right. You know, we've all got a child inside us. Okay, you can get one afterwards. All right. Now, this is something we've been making in our teacher workshops, and there are now several smaller ones of these. I thought I used them to be glad they're smaller, floating around in Popo schools. And we can take our fossil fuels and we can show that burning, okay? So we're going to show, make it relevant, but we're going to do something good with it. Now, I'm always, it's one a conundrum I've kind of turned over. It's like, should I attach the positive emotions to fossil fuels? I'm not sure about that, but I know that the kids love it. And having them engaged, maybe that's a good try. We need some good chemistry to work out the amount and some good mathematics. I'm going to pop that in there. Probably lost a little bit there, so let's put a little bit more in. Thank you. So once again, we can see that fossil fuel, and we can make that invisible visible. Did you see the fire inside? Can you feel the heat, sir? I can see you, sorry. All right. So, look, we've attached positive emotions to fossil fuels, but at the same time, those positive emotions, they're going to reinforce the memory of when we burn this stuff, it makes other stuff, okay? We can see that carbon dioxide pushing the marshmallow out. We can feel the heat. We can witness it. It's emotionally resonant. It sticks in your mind, okay? So, these kind of activities can bring about these positive emotions, which are great for learning, great for remembering, but also great for banking some motivation that we can use in climate change action. Which brings me to my fifth principle. Doesn't bring me to my fifth principle because I have a cheeky little, can we have the slides back, please? A cheeky little extra slide from the teacher workshop, okay? These are some photos from the last couple of days. This teacher on the right, so beautiful, has started the day. She was quite tired. Some teachers travel for up to 3 hours to come. Okay, and I thought, I'm going to work hard to get them going. This is by the end of the day, okay? And she's like, yeah! She was so excited making these little wind turbines. And you can see we're just making them out of common items, okay? Just out of paper straws, paper cups, skewers, things like that. So they can learn about, how we can take action on climate change, at the same time learn these STEM skills and, STEM knowledge, and most critically, these kind of methods where people are constructing things, building things, solving problems in their own way, they build what we call 21st century skills. These are things like creativity, teamwork, resilience, all the things that we're going to need to address climate change, produce energy in better ways. So we've used a lot of methods like that, and I use methods like this with my students. There's some of my master's students. They're building a hovercraft. Yeah. Okay. So these kind of, the pedagogies, the methods we use are really important. Okay, if we can use methods that embed problem solving and build, creativity, build resilience, these are the kind of skills that young people are going to need to take forward to play a role in addressing climate change and frankly, just everyday life. So our fifth principle is all about that kind of end game. These activities need to provide avenues to actually taking action in the real world. That might be immediate in the short term or in the long term. There's a lovely story on the right here from partners in Kenya. They did this wonderful activity where they researched what climate-resilient plants, climate-resilient indigenous plants in the local environment. They collected those seeds. They talked to local people who were knowledgeable in these plants, brought in that indigenous knowledge, and then they connected this with the biology curriculum, seed germination, okay? These really, nuts and bolts things from biology. But then they took those plants, learned the biology, but then they went and planted them in the school grounds, and they planted them in the community, okay? Providing shade, providing food, stopping erosion. and also bringing people together in a collective way. So when we use these hands-on activities, they're great for learning, but we need to think about how they can actually create a pathway, build a bridge so that young people can see they can actually take action, they can make a difference. This is a young boy, I think that is in Kenya, and he's on the hovercraft. We've got this here, and this hovercraft is going to be donated to the Science Education Centre. I call it hovercraft diplomacy. There are 4 of them in Africa at the moment. But I like to think if we have a ride on an electric vehicle, and this one is powered by a lithium battery, of course we've got to think about where we're going to get that lithium from. Okay, how are we going to do that in a responsible way? We don't want to bulldoze communities to dig up the ground underneath them. We need to think about how we can solve this big problem we've got without making more problems along the way. So I like to think that he might ride on that little hovercraft, and then when he gets to buying his first car, and maybe I'm an optimist here, okay, remember the hovercraft, I might just buy myself an electric car. Should we give it a go? Yeah. Okay. Now I don't want to get bugs in my eyes. And it sometimes goes wrong. I have to duck. So we've got a little leaf blower, garden blower. And it's going to make just a little layer of air underneath. It's a dream. So we can build these things and we can tell stories with them, okay? And electric vehicles, storing energy in batteries rather than burning things is a good step forward. So if you want more on the principles, there is an open access paper, and also if you'd like a copy of the booklet that we've been using for the teachers, that is also available through that QR code. I can pop that back up towards the end. So we've been using these principles to do different things in our practice. Can I get the slides up, thanks? Thanks, guys. Using them to do different things. This week we've used these kinds of principles to design teacher workshops for teachers here in Limpopo. And like I've been using the demonstrations here, also science shows. And you can see some footage of a science show using these kind of methods. I couldn't bring the monster truck, okay, it was too big to get in. But different ways that we can take these principles, build them into interactive experiences, hands-on activities or demonstrations. And in some recent research, I've actually been using these methods as a way to kind of, I guess, help young people think about how they'd like to use energy, how they'd like to make it in the future. Okay, so where a science show or some kind of, I love play shop, not workshop, can actually be a way to encourage young people to express what they think about how we should address climate change, or in the case of this research, how our energy transition should proceed. So I did the science show, and before and afterwards, we collected some data about how do you think we should make and use energy. If we want young people to participate in the energy transition, the first step is actually talking to them about what kind of transition they'd like to see. Quite often adults are pretty sure what youth think, and they just go ahead and do whatever they think they should do anyway. We need to give youth a genuine way to participate meaningfully, not tokenistically, in the energy transition, and it's not happening at the moment. So it's a recent paper by Jared and colleagues. They looked at a lot of studies, a systematic review, about how young people are actually getting to participate in the energy transition. What they found is that 94% of the studies looked at things where we're just teaching young people about energy literacy and education, okay? We're not trying to activate them, we're not trying to motivate them, we're just saying, here's some knowledge, do with it what you will, okay? What Jared and colleagues call this is a passive actor role. And most of the time that we're engaging, I wouldn't call it engaging, young people around energy, we're doing it in this passive actor way. Here, receive our knowledge, okay? This is where I get up on my soapbox, I'm afraid. What they found is that 26% looked at energy conservation research. And this is kind of saying to young people, oh, you can turn off the lights, you can ride your bike to school, you can make a difference that way. Hey, of course, everyone can contribute. But when we load this onto young people and we say that your individual actions are what you need to do, we put a burden on them. Okay? And a lot of young people take that burden on and they do stuff with it. But it's a big burden. We need to think about that as we do this. If we focus on individual actions, it can really burden youth. It can make their anxiety worse. And when we ask youth what they think, they say, why should I make individual actions when my government isn't doing that? Okay, that would, yeah, I won't say those words out loud, but that would upset me, okay? And this is a problem. It was only 23% around climate advocacy, okay, and this is things like getting young people to come to UN conferences, things like that, can play a major role, but again, we need to look at, is that genuine participation, or are they kind of being wheeled out for show? And energy governance at around 10%. And this is actually where young people are actually looking at how energy is used in their local context. And it's just that small number, that advocacy and governance, that really position youth as energy citizens. People that understand energy and can make decisions, take actions related to it. Okay? This is a really small number. And what Jared and colleagues conclude is we need research to bridge that gap between perceptions and behaviour and support pathways so that youth can really participate. And this requires a better understanding of youth values regarding their vision of a renewable-based society. So we've been trying to work out, well, what is that vision? And when I thought about, well, I've got to try and get this out of maybe year 6 kids, year 8 kids, how are we going to get the youth to really express themselves? And I think it's really resonant with the conference, the way we got it. We got them to do drawings before and after the science show. And lovely quote from Dewey, a bit of hero of mine. And Dewey says, in fact, it's a bit ironic that I read this out. I was just thinking before, I should have put it into AI, although that chews up a lot of energy, and actually turn it into a picture. What Dewey says there is thinking directly in terms of colours, tones, images is a different operation technically from thinking in words. The only superstition will hold that because the meaning of paintings and symphonies cannot be translated into words or that of poetry into prose, therefore thought is monopolised by the latter. Okay, love the ending. There are values and meanings that can be expressed only by the immediately visible. So Dewey's making this argument that, you know, I could give some people a survey. I could ask youth to write down what kind of energy future they wanted, but maybe it'd be a better idea to let them express it in a way that's really intuitive to young people, okay? Drawings. So we did that, and they did great drawings. These are some of the initial drawings. The one on the left is from an adult, and these are young kids kind of thinking about how we want to make and use energy. That was the stimulus we gave them before and after the science show. Now, we're still going through this data, but there's some really interesting themes coming out, okay? As I thought, as I've seen, the demonstrations had impact. That little quote on the left, just like when Dr. Graham got a canister with the gas and he put it on the fire, the marshmallow flew, okay, just like you saw before, which is what a car does, and that releases gas, okay, and goes on to say, well, what if we had a solar-powered car? So we see the impact these demonstrations can have. Indeed, it did reveal the invisible. When I saw all the gas and all the fire, it also showed us that young people were worried, all right? Still feel sad about climate change. Me too. But we also saw evidence of positive reappraisals in that quote down the bottom. It changed my emotions about energy. I feel more positive about energy production now. This is really good. This is good. This is what we need to do. Some of the themes that have come out, and hopefully if I stop playing with my toys and get back on my computer, You'll see this in print soon. But we saw that youth really have a vision for their energy transition that is hopeful, okay? And it is embedded with positive emotion, but it does that in a responsible way and an ethical way, okay? Youth were overwhelmingly, and I should say that these are youth in Canberra, in Australia, and they could well be very different to youth, or they will be very different to youth in other parts of the world. But they were positive about the transition, and they really saw renewables, when contrasted with fossil fuels, as something that was good, intrinsically good and natural. And one of the real things that jumped out in all these pictures was the sun. Okay, the sun has an iconic resonance for young people when we talk about energy and when we talk about climate change. Okay, the sun, it was always happy. And I think in my next show, I actually want to lean into that. Maybe we'll have a sun character that is actually part of that. So the sun was happy, except when it wasn't. Okay. Now, youth really wanted a responsible transition as well. And I must say, I cover this in the show, so I know they affected some of these perceptions in that anticipatory stimulus. But youth would talk about things like this. This isn't something I talked about in the science show. A wind turbine made of recycled plastic. Students talking about no lithium because it destroys the environment. Okay? So they want to see a responsible transition and they want to bring everyone along with them. That quote at the top saying, why don't we change? Why don't we change over? I'd rather not make good profit than live in a world that's awful. Okay? Tough decisions. And these little stick figures, all these different stick figures, kind of looking at different perspectives on how we should go forward. Another theme that jumped out was around relevance. And it was a two-edged sword. Okay? Relevance really focused what young people can do in the energy transition. And what we saw is that it both focuses and limits. A lot of the pictures that youth drew were all about, turning off the lights, riding to school. Okay, these individual actions that we often advocate. We advocate that they change their individual actions without actually involving them in that bigger systemic change. And youth really saw energy in the context of things they did, remote-controlled cars, charging their phone. And of course, that's a natural thing. But it also challenges us, as the adults in the room, to say, well, why aren't you thinking about the bigger picture? And it's mainly because adults aren't inviting them in to think about that bigger picture. And you can see that quote at the bottom. Okay? It certainly made me feel an extra extreme need to change, but not much I can personally do without adults. Okay? This is a problem for adults, not youth. So we also saw that in the way that youth express themselves, that they did want to make a difference. And if we look into the literature, youth really do, they want to have an active role in this, but there are not that many opportunities. A lot of youth drew these really cool inventions, okay? This kind of caterpillar thing that recycles rubbish into energy, Dyson spheres. Oh, we don't have the hamster wheel, but there's a great hamster wheel one. Treadmills where a robot runs, okay? So maybe not, if we've got any physicists here, certainly not adhering to the laws of energy, but definitely expressing that young people will want to see change and they've got ideas about how it should go forward. So to sum up, as you've seen, these hands-on demonstration-based methods, whether you're watching them, but even more so, I'd hypothesise when you're doing them, okay? Like when you saw those teachers actually getting hands-on and doing things, okay? They can be really powerful for climate change, energy, other social issues, health as well. I've used these kind of methods in an HIV intervention in KZN. They're powerful. And youth really expressed in those drawings that they want hopeful messages and they want an energy transition, a response to climate change that really thinks about ethics, it thinks about the whole community, not just the people who've got it good, and it thinks about the environment at the same time. Some of the other data, which I'm still working through, really shows that youth seem to see discrete transitions. They can understand when we move from a petrol-powered car to an electric car, but they don't see that at a systems level. okay? And part of that is that they're not invited into that conversation in a meaningful way. So their participation is limited, but what I'm advancing here is that along with many other approaches, whether we're using art, whether like we are at the conference, these kind of hands-on activities that really build agency and they have pathways towards taking action can be a big part of the solution. Thank you. Lovely. I think we may have some time for questions, but we may want to make up some time.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Nice presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Can we give him a hands of applause again? A very nice presentation, very relevant, very interesting. For the sake of time, I'm going to take 1 or maybe 5 questions or 5 comments for him, just for the sake of time. We are behind with 30 minutes, so we are just trying to make some time. Anyone who has got a question for Dr. Graham or a comment? Okay, I don't know whether you have, do you have mics?
That's right. I can probably hear. Let's keep it moving.
Yeah, please, you.
I can work with your question.
Have you seen a change in attitude of youth? Have you seen a change in the attitude of youth towards climate change over the last, say, 10 years? Because in my interactions, it seems to be getting less, like people are kind of shutting down and switching off because it's too big a problem.
Yeah, certainly the context in Australia is like that. We actually, way back in the 80s, our government was saying we should take action. We've gone up and down. But definitely in the last 10 years, certainly, and I can only really comment in all my own Australian context, but we've had political actors, global events that are really, I guess, changing the public conversation. Canberra's a very progressive city. All our electricity is now fully renewable. Yet I've done workshops on science shows where the parents have brought along the kids, and once they realise that it's not just a science show, it's got a deeper message. Yeah. So I wouldn't say that's universal, but yeah, I've definitely seen a change. And that kind of, I think one of the reasons that I now do my shows kind of looking at energy, not leading with climate change, I've talked about a lot today, is because it's a better frame. People are happier to have a conversation about energy when they're really talking about adapting to climate change. But yeah, definitely seen peaks and troughs.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. It was very insightful. I really enjoyed it. I just wanted to ask, you've just spoken about the entry point that you take for your presentation. Is there a way you could also bring in the other drivers of change that are linked to climate change, the social kind of dimensions, in some ways, in terms of the energy, chain competition between big countries, whatever it is, poverty dimensions. Is there a way of thinking through that, or is it mostly on the biophysical side, where you're showing the chemistry, the carbon dioxide, how it works,
It's a good question. So I've come from kind of STEM education land, and so I guess that's where I've led. But certainly leaning more into the social behaviour change. This show, some of the other data really showed that youth really think technology is going to come to the rescue, and a lot of people, kind of lean into that narrative. But I think those things around behaviour change and the social. What kind of things are you hinting at when you say the social?
So I'm just thinking of some of the social drivers, like in the world that we live in here in South Africa, service delivery, when you go and talk to youth in the areas that we are working with, say for example, Major Antidote, the biggest thing that they understand, because climate change is important, but it's the lack of service delivery, it's the politics of climate change, it's those things that they want to also hear a little bit more about. So they're desperate to get involved, but they don't only want to see it from coming from a hardcore science perspective. So the agency often can be enhanced even more if they went to the city of Johannesburg with a complete story rather than showing our mayor this. But I hope that the mayor can see that as well.
I'm so glad. Could I have the slides back?
The slides
that
there.
You asked that question because I've left this out of my talk. That kind of taking civic action, okay, whether it's protesting or writing to your politician or whatever, that is a gap. And in putting the activities together that the teachers did, it's a gap that we've acknowledged. So we have thought about and started to discuss, well, what would a practical activity that was around civic action or around, collective responses look like? And so working with colleagues that have researched, the climate strikes were massive, youth climate strikes in Australia, and actually trying to think, how can we bring that in? So yeah, it's a great question. It's something we're certainly curious about, but I don't have a great answer for it yet.
Thanks very much, Graham. Any other question? There, on top there. Can you hear her? Can you raise your voice a bit?
Thank you so much for the insightful presentation. On your slide, you were talking about how the youth is passive instead of active. So what I wanted to know is, from most facts that I've read, they position youth as passive citizens than active. So what are the practical things that we can do also to be active participants?
So what kind of pathways for agency? I think there's a lot of different things that we can do. I think the things that we focused on in our work and that story. Sorry, could I get the slides back? That story from Kenya that you can see up on the right there. These are the kind of things where the hands-on activity can actually lead into some kind of active role where they're not just kind of passive recipients of what's happening, but they can actually take that action. I think personally that those kind of activities where, at a kind of community level, where they can make change, in this case, tree planting. I've seen great initiatives around like kind of community recycling, things like that. And I think why I lean into those kind of things more than, say, having youth at a UN conference, which of course is a good thing too, is that the impacts that they make are immediate. And if you talk to a lot of those youth that are involved in the kind of governance side, they'll often come, speak really passionately to a group of adult decision makers who often just go and do what they were going to do anyway. And that just must be so discouraging. I've talked to young climate activists that are just pulling their hair out because of that. So I think that community level action where they can make an immediate difference in their local community, other people can see that. They need to get feedback that the energy they're putting in is making a difference, because if they don't and that keeps happening, you just, I think that's just going to be very defeating for those young people. So I think, kind of community level things, but, those kind of community organised, imagine if a young person's involved in that when they're 15 or 18, I would predict, and I'm sure there's great stories out there, that they're the ones that can go and do things on a global scale. I mean, Greta Thunberg's story, sitting there outside Parliament with one sign, turns into a global movement. Not every story's like that, but I think starting with the local is a really good place to start.
Thanks, Graham. Last one. If there is, it looks like, there is I don't see it. I think it looks like they are covered. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Dr. Graham Walker. Once again, may you please give him hands of applause, please, for the good presentation, a very informative hands-on climate connection. We really enjoyed it. I'm going to hand over the ropes to the convener. Please, over to you.
Very sorry, this will only take 1 second. I wanted to finish with a bang, and what we have in here, I won't interrupt your program any further, Lenore, but what we've got in here is actually a fuel that is much better than our fossil fuels, because when it burns, all it makes is water. Anyone know what it might be? Okay, it's hydrogen. We've actually been making hydrogen on a small scale with the teachers, just using things from the shop, right? But to finish with a bang, and sorry, I might ask you just to move back just a little bit. and hopefully implant this message about youth empowerment and hands-on learning as a way to get there in your mind. You might want to block your ears, especially, in fact, if you're at the front, I would ask you to block your ears. So we're going to get some energy, but we are not going to get some emissions. Okay.
While they set up, yeah, I think you can agree with me that luckily Lenore knows a good thing when she hears it, and it didn't take a lot of persuasion to get her to get Graham here. And yes, we were when I fetched him from the airport, I saw that he carried a very big bag. It's a very big bag for a man, so I thought, okay, it's okay. And on Monday afternoon, after the teacher's workshop, he came to me and he said, can we stop at Mr. Price? So I said, okay, why? So he said, no, I need a belt. I packed all my props, but I forgot a belt. Sorry, Graham. So, yes, traveling with all these toys, I think people might think funny things if one carries a whole bag full of toys. Ready? Right. I'm now going to call on Prof. Chalky. He's the director for the School of Physical and Mineral Sciences, to please come and chair the following session.
I think if the people on the panel, if you come join us too now.
All right, good afternoon.
Sorry, everybody ran for a quick comfort break. Does anyone want to run for a quick comfort break too? Because we're just going to keep on going.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to suggest. And those who are scared like me, please, let's get some comfort break. Yeah, we can start. How many minutes? How many minutes? 10 minutes? 2 minutes. Without any waste of time, introduce my panel. Then I'll allow them to introduce themselves, just who they are and what they do as we move. Thank you very much. Where do we start?
Just for introduction, we'll just go down.
Thank you. So, I don't need to introduce myself properly, but my name's Lenore Anderson. I'm Distinguished Professor of Public Health and Medical Anthropology at the University of Witwatersrand. But for the last 15 years, I've been doing conferences with exhibitions and the arts included in them. So in fact this one is my 13th production.
And the majority of them have been concerned with the elements in one way or another. And so it was just a joy to do this one here and to think around issues about what we've achieved as a research team.
Good afternoon. My name is Arnold Sivula, and I'm a master's student here at University of Limpopo. And I initiated my degree at University of Venda back in 2019, and then I did my honors here at University of Limpopo, and I was supervised by Mr. Murray, honors, and then in masters, I am supervised by Prof. Lenore, Mr. Murray, and Ms. Annalise Potgieter. And what I do in my research is I incorporate art into science, and I do that through the utility of murals. So I guess I'll share more as time goes on, as we share, as we sorry. Yeah.
I'm Bronwyn Egan, and I'm a biologist with the Biodiversity Department here at the University of Limpopo, and I'm curating the plant collection at the Larry Leach Herbarium. But I'm also really interested in the spaces of resource utilization, natural resource utilization, and how to conserve the places in which they occur.
Hi, my name is Sandra Zarufis. I am a PhD candidate at the University of Amsterdam and part of the Eco-Imagining project. My research is based here in Mankweng, and I'm interested in how dual governance impacts access to resources, in particular access to land and access to water and the likes. I have a background in landscape architecture, so I'm also really keen on participatory methods and visual methods and how to incorporate that in our work.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Farina Lindeke, and I am a lecturer in the Department of Geography and Environmental Studies here at the University of Limpopo. I think if I had to describe myself, I would say that I am a reformed hard scientist, really involved and really interested in doing research with communities and you know, doing science that has an impact here locally, where we can see it and where we can actually work with people to find solutions.
My name is Ogungbemi Christopher Kiola. I am an applied theatre specialist. I am attached to the Performing Arts Center at this University of Limpopo. We're finding solutions for Africa through creativity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You cannot, just keep the mic with you. Okay, so this is the panel, and we're going to be interfacing. Please listen attentively, because I'm going to give you time for questions as well at the end. So I'm just going to start right away with Chris here, who just arrived, just to share with us in terms of what, just about 5 minutes about, performing arts. How is this related to, this conference, and how can we benefit? How is it done?
Thank you, Program Director, Prof. And members of the panel, I greet you all. and members of the audience. We need to perhaps re-emphasize that theater is the most social of all arts. You cannot be social in a chemistry laboratory. You cannot be too playful in a physics laboratory. You may not even be bothered about the issues that goes on in societies in, for example, a science laboratory. You're concerned about other things. But the performative art, we mirror the society. We showcase the society. We bring out what exactly the society is. We amplify it. We put it there in our faces. So we inform, we educate, and then in the process we entertain the public as they view, as they participate, as audiences in our productions. Now, in the intersection of disciplines all over the world today, as we see faculties, interfaculty relationships, interdisciplinary relationships, we discovered that art surely has a place in all of the disciplines. We have our foundation in philosophies, and philosophy is involved in all of disciplines. And so we discovered that you cannot separate performative art from day-to-day activities of human beings. And we begin to involve art in all disciplines, in all areas of life, which seems to be able to grasp the reality of life. One of my most favorite comedian today is Trevor Noah. Now, Trevor Noah will discuss various issues. He will discuss issues of race, issues of gender, issues of politics, racial issue, homophobic issue. He will discuss all issues, and we will sit down and laugh and get the lessons. So we want to create an environment through performative art where our audiences will sit down and listen and watch as we mirror the society, the world at large, and put it there in their faces as they recline in their seats, laugh, enjoy, and meditate on what we put. So we know that we have a place in the society, in bringing solutions to the world of pain, the world of hate, the world of hatred, the world of xenophobia, the world of hatred, homophobia, and all types. So we want to bring it. One of our offerings over the years was a play we called Ghost Twerkers, which brought out the problems and the situations of young women in tertiary institutions and how they look for ways and means to educate themselves because the paltry sum that they receive is not enough. So we bring out the situations on the stage so that the audience can really participate and be part of it. We took that play to Grahamstown. The Vice Chancellor of Grahamstown saw the play and said, this is, the Vice Chancellor of Rhodes University said, this is topical. This is the situation. We shouldn't hide this under the carpet. And over the years, we have seen people get healed now, I can quote and unquote it, get healed now mentally, psychologically, when they see the play. One of our students who have been abused by family members, every December she knew she was going to be raped by a member of her family from the mother's side, from the father's side. So she was on the stage, she was playing the victim of rape. And after one of the performances, I said, girl, that was good, powerful performance. She said, I was not performing. I was acting out what happened to me. Then I said, I'm sorry. She said, no, don't be sorry. That was closure for me. And we know psychologists bring people who have suffered shark attacks at beaches and take them back there to step on the shores of the ocean again and surf again. So when we bring this and confront the issues to our audience, we discovered that we have closures, we have a way of dealing with these issues, and then we can move forward as a community of people. And this is our duty, and we know we have a place in all sciences. Thank you.
Wow.
Does it make sense at all?
Yes. Wow. Thank you very much for sharing. So it's not only dancing, It's not only just making moves, but it's sending a message of hope to many people. That's very, very great. Let's have those questions ready at the end. Let me move to Sandra. Sandra, Sandra is working very hard on a PhD.
Yes.
Yes, and you're doing some, mapping project. And if you could share with the audience, how do you do that and how is that related? And how do you work with the communities around your project?
So I first came to Mankweng in 2022, and through the project, we were introduced to the Ratanang vegetable garden. And this group of people has been my main group of participants and interlocutors. And in anthropology, as you know, we do a lot of deep hanging out, which is you live in this place, you build a relationship with people, you volunteer there, you give them your time, and that's how you get to know them and their situation. And so we wanted to try to share their stories in a more creative manner. And the first workshop that we held was on photo voice. So we had this group of women over the age of 45 coming and learning how to, take proper pictures and taking photographs all around campus with the assistance of the Center for Rural Community Empowerment, just down the road from VC Lane. And it was a fun workshop, a fun day. We gave them homework with a prompt. Take some pictures of that can tell your story about being a farmer or something else, maybe your positionality as a mother, a single mother, or just as a resident of Mankweng. And unfortunately, this didn't work out because most of them were either too occupied with their farming labor or not so tech savvy. So we found that when engaging and trying to introduce these creative methods, it's really important to try to find a medium that's easy and accessible. And I think that when you start to introduce the, using cell phones and things like that, it's better if you have them buddy up with maybe somebody younger, and it requires a lot of follow-up. But that aside, we then had a participatory mapping workshop and digital storytelling workshop. So in this workshop, once more, we had a big cohort of women come who were quite excited to just leave the field for a day and look at something else other than cabbages. So they came through and we encouraged them to make some drawings and on aerial photographs to pinpoint the areas that were significant to them and then to write out a little story and record it. Arnold was actually one of the facilitators at these workshops. And that also was very fun and interesting. But again, some of the learnings were around the fact that it's not that easy to get a rich and deep and meaningful story out of one workshop that's 3 hours long. But out of that, I was able to then analyze the data and create a consolidated map and also create a digital story through ArcGIS story maps. And if you also go to the Science Education Center and look through the posters, you can quickly access that. We have one story, which is Adolfina's story, who shares how she, with a group of women, found a plot of land that was belonging to somebody else, of which they don't really own it, as some of you may know. Land around this area is under traditional authorities, so it's communally held land, but people have permission to occupy a space. But nonetheless, Adolfina was sharing how when she and her friends were farming on this plot that belonged to another woman, the woman was very much bothering them when it came to when they made money and were doing well. But then when they struggled to get water, either because they don't have the infrastructure and they were reliant on borehole water or water that was delivered through trucks, when those struggles came, the lady was nowhere to be found. And eventually, that pressure of working on somebody else's land pushed them out of that space and out of this extra means of trying to build a livelihood and get an income. But anyway, we're exploring all these different stories, and I think that in using these tools and methods, bridging the gap of the technical and the arts, and bringing that to a wider audience, you can communicate these stories in a more meaningful way that sticks with people.
Wow, thank you very, very much. I think you can pass it to Farina. Just by extension, as a lecturer and working with communities, how do you find it? How does it matter to do work with community? Maybe you can share. No, thanks.
Thank you for the opportunity. So I am here representing a team of, I hate the whole division between hard scientists and soft scientists, but unfortunately I think it is still in academia quite a common thing. Must I keep the mic closer? Okay, I'll keep it closer. And basically the story I have to share is a story of unlearning, of how we had to find a way to unlearn our thinking of we design, a research design, we go do research in a community, we have our outputs and that is our results. We were forced to really change the way that we think of doing things, and we were forced into a situation where we were intellectually and emotionally quite uncomfortable because we had to give over control. We started with a very small project at a primary school. It has now grown into community cooperatives, community partnerships, student advocacy groups on campus. Something that started a very small seed grew really, really into something amazing and something that has transformed the way that all of us look at the way that we do science and the impact that we want our science to have. And I think one of the things that we struggled with the most is very relevant to what Graham spoke about, is, how do we find value in the process of everything that is happening? And how do we go from just awareness to concern, and to actually have people move from just being aware of a problem, concerned about a problem, to actually taking action. And I think that is where we learned the power of the arts in working with communities. We saw a lot of strong awareness, people raising concern, but they care deeply. They feel sad, they feel angry, they feel worried, but there is something missing between concern and action. That process in the middle, that feeling of self-efficacy, a way to give everybody, regardless if you're a child, whether you're an elder in a community, anybody that is affected by a specific problem, to give them the feeling of self-efficacy and agency. So that they can feel, I can do something, we can make a difference. Because what we've noticed is that, you know, if we leave before we've achieved that, you know, that concern can become overwhelm. It can become silence. It can become, you know, what's the point? It's just going to be the same. And, you know, in the school project, the school learners came up with the idea of doing a play to share with their fellow classmates, to share with their parents, community members, the concerns that they had, to educate, to take action in the community. And that is then where, for the first time, I actually made contact with Chris. And Chris helped us. He worked with the children. They wrote a community day. And from that, we had parents, we had elders, we had other people contact us. And we grew such a strong community connection there that we are now not doing research in the community. We are doing research with the community. And we consult them in what their needs are, what the questions are that they have, what are the issues. And, you know, we are really trying to make our science work for society and have an impact. I think that's it.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. That is very, very, you know, moving. I mean, I know it's not that easy, especially working with community, but, you know, the way you are doing it, I think is very, very beneficial. In most cases, we don't even go back to the communities. We just take and, you know, publish. But you are doing a wonderful job. Yeah. Thanks. Arnold, if you can, because I saw earlier you really wanted to go on and on, speak about your project. So if you could share with us, I mean, the project that you do, and then the impact, if you may. Yeah.
Okay, hi once again. In my project, we're using art to communicate the issues of water, energy, and food. We're not just communicating them, we're actually checking their precarities, like the issues that surround or evolve around water, energy, and food. And in that, we developed a strategic way of communicating this. We did that through the incorporation of art into science. So mind you, I'm doing environmental sciences, so I had to include art into it. The conceptual part, I did it with, actually the supervisors came in with the conceptual part, and then I came in as a researcher. And I fell in love with the topic, and from there I went on, and the engagement part, when I had the three objectives. The first objective included the artist. The second one included the learners, which was the main objective. Why? Because it was a way of engaging with the community. And engaging with the community includes like different variety of people. It could be age, like gender, whatever. It doesn't matter, but it's still engaging with the community. And the learners being our target group, we had to conduct like kind of like a lengthy, depending on their views, their perceptions, the perspectives of how they view the murals that we have. I'm sure you probably saw them at Science Center. Those murals were actually communicating water, energy, and food, and the linkage between them. And the strategy that we used there was the Venn diagram. In maths, we call it Venn diagram, where it shows the overlapping of water, energy, and food. And what I did was I interviewed each and every learner in the groups that visited the Science Center. At Science Center, the thing was, they didn't just come for the project that I was conducting or I was involved in. They came in for another experiment, which means at some point you'll find that maybe there are about like 2 schools, and you end up interview maybe less number that you actually expected to interview. And things don't really turn out the way. But at the end of the day, I managed to have enough data with that I managed to like analyze and develop themes. And after developing themes, I managed to quantify the data using RStudio, which was a great experience, I'd say. And with that, I managed to produce some good results. And then the other problem was with the third objective. The third objective was more focused on the teachers. Fortunately, I managed to interview like 2 because the other teachers refused to participate. And I tried to convince them. I tried isolating just so they couldn't, they couldn't hear the questions that I had to ask another one. But it's unfortunate they refused still. But only I managed to interview 2, of which it was a good one. They gave me an information which was enough, and I managed to also quantify it and came up with some good results, I believe. And then there was always a linkage between all these 3 objectives. The first objective was more on the artist. They developed the murals. I was part of them. They developed the murals, and then after developing the murals, remember the murals are communicating the issues around water, energy, and food. And then with that, those murals, we can use them to advocate for water, energy, and food. We can use them to, communicate a lot of stuff. Like I said, their perspectives, their perceptions, how they understand those things is the thing that matters the most. And I had some problems, I would say, is the limitations in our studies, that's what we say, with the problem of ethical clearance. The ethical clearance came in because it took like 9 months, so we had to change our plan, like the whole plan, the project plan. I wanted to conduct like the pre and the post interviews, but that couldn't happen because somehow, some restrictions there and there, that was the problem. And yeah, I couldn't do the pre, I had to do the post in most of the objectives, but there was still a good linkage there. Yeah.
Wow. Thanks very much for sharing such a very powerful project you are doing. I wouldn't think about that topic myself. Yeah, no, that's great. Of course, it's research. There are limitations, there are risks, but you'll get there. Yes, are we still here? Yes, I can see. Yeah, I don't want to see people sleeping because for me, the panel is very interesting. What they're sharing is very, very moving. So I'm going to invite Bronwyn. I think the only curator, isn't it? Yeah, I know you do a lot of things, but can you at least share a little bit on some of the project on your edible insects? Do they communicate? How do... Yeah, please, if you could share with us, let's hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. They do communicate. So, I have to read a bit. About almost 20 years ago, I started working on a suite of insects in the Blouberg, which is a rural area up in the sort of north of Limpopo. And at that time, scientists understood that insects were nutritionally of value, and the people who ate them understood that they were valuable, both tasty and nutritious. But the world was only just starting to wake up, well, to re-wake up, because traditionally humans have eaten insects for millennia. But in the West, for various reasons, we stopped eating them. And in sort of more developed countries, we hadn't eaten insects for a long time. So some of the questions were around, we have a food security issue, insects have less issues in terms of breeding them and keeping them and stocking them, less ethical issues. Perhaps the world should be re-looking at insects. And I was working up in Blouberg, and so I decided I would start looking at those questions. So the first idea was to get a database of all the edible insects in the area, and that meant speaking to the people who eat them. So I come from a hard science background. I'm a zoologist, and so I set out all my objectives and my research design around how you would normally just conduct science, very objectively, trying to be very objective. But of course, I couldn't get to the insects on my own. I needed the people, and that was wonderful. It was the best part of the whole project, was building relationships with the people who understood these insects, who understood this natural resource and the environment in which they lived. And before I go any further, I want to share a song and a poem that the children would sing. Forgive my accent, my Siperi is still dire. Din tlamakura di ila selemo marega serutuana dinyaka letla bula din tlamakura denied. It means denied summer we are denied winter and autumn, denied in summer, we only need spring. And Dinkla makura are big ants. They're big black ants with a swollen abdomen that's full of fat, meaning makura. And they are often people's favorite insect in Bloberg. So the other song is, insects, you are my favorite dish, my favorite relish. You make our land to be beautiful. You make us to be healthy because you give us more vitamins and protein. When rain falls on our land, you increase very easily and give us relish. We are all proud of you, insects. And to me, those two songs I could have stopped my research right there, because the people who ate the insects, loved the insects, knew they were healthy, knew they came with the rains, knew that they needed a healthy environment. And so the arts captured everything. People knew intuitively or through aeons of experience that these insects were important. But if we want to convince companies to produce insects, we have to have a nutritional bar on the product. We need to have information that's scientifically gathered, that can be easily checked and verified and validated. And so there's a wonderful mixture between art and science. Yes, we kind of get inspired by art, and we get our aspirations come from that, but then we need science to find the steps to get to our end product. And right at the beginning, I was young and naive, and I was like, oh, the world should be eating insects. We need to make bars, we need to make biscuits, we need to sell these things. The people in Bloberg can generate an income through selling their insects. But that was a long time ago, and when I was young. And through the years, I realized that just monetizing something that's part of your traditional knowledge is not always the best answer. We needed to do a lot of research around how to harvest the insects, whether it's sustainable, and how to get life cycles of these insects. And while I was working with the people, we found one edible insect that was very, very little known to science. It had a scientific name, but we didn't know anything about its lifestyle or its life cycle. It's a little insect called bopeta. It's much tastier than mopani worms. I liked it almost as much as biltong. It's very hairy. It looks atrocious. It does not look wonderful at all, but it was extremely good to eat. And all we knew from a scientific point of view was it's Hemigana variegata. We just knew that it was an edible monkey and what family it belonged to. So I had my objectives and my very rigid questionnaires and my scale to measure these things on. And I went out and I walked with the people to find the insect. And they were telling me all sorts of stuff about this thing that nobody in the scientific world knew. We thought that it only had one food plant that it could live off. But actually we discovered, no, the people knew that it also was found on a different plant. And so just by walking and talking and living and being with people, you discover so many things that didn't come out of the rigid sort of database that you'd set up. So that was one thing I learned. And then also, we did find a little bit about how a certain insect, we did the nutritional analysis on one or two of the insects. It's very expensive, it takes a long time, so we couldn't do them all. But from that, years and years later, which is what I find amazing, is I had this aspiration that we should produce bars out of these insects that we can sell. And years later, in a different village, in a different part of Limpopo, I worked with somebody called Martin Boima, who had lost his father when he was writing matric. And his father had helped me look for insects in that area. And I knew about Martin. I knew he could help me get insects. We were looking at makeke, which is the termite, the soldier termite, not the flying insect. And an intern from France asked me if she could please come and work in my lab. And I just laughed because I don't have a lab. I have sort of a kitchen and, the field out there. And she came over, and she's French, and she cooks amazingly, and I don't. I make food. And she produces like wonderful cuisine. And she worked with Martin to produce a termite bar out of these makeke. And to me, that's another way how art and science work together. The art of cooking was just incredible for me to see her produce these beautiful things out of my funny kitchen. I don't even have a proper stove. I have a camping gas cylinder. And we experimented. She kept notes. Martin kept notes. I was the scientist, but I didn't keep the notes. And now Martin, 6 years later, has a company of his own, producing these termite bars and marula nut bars. And I wish his father was alive to see how wonderfully he couldn't come to this conference because he was presenting his products in Joburg. But I think we do have his bars. We'll share with them with you later. So yeah, science does need to be rigid and it does need to be repeatable. But we need art and we need communication. It's as important.
Wow. Thank you so much. You just reminded me of how I grew up. Yes. You know, we used to go all out there to look for locust. Yes, all these things. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I know we're not good with time, but I'm going to invite Prof. Lino here to, just wrap it for us. I know you're involved in a lot of projects. So now, just share with us, what are these projects? What do you do, on water, energy, and food?
What I'd actually like to do, thank you so much, is just describe 3 different approaches of artists working with us over the past 4 years now on the eco-imagining. And I think each of them captures a quite different way of what it means to use art practice in addressing issues around precariousness, inequality, resource scarcity, and climate change, which are broadly the themes we used. So the first artist is an artist from the Eastern Cape called Christine Dixie, and her work deals with an irony that Graham picked up this afternoon in his keynote speech. And the irony is this, that to harvest the rare earth in order to support batteries and other technologies, in order to reduce dependence on fossil fuel, you often risk disrupting the environment in negative ways. And it really is a lesson around in thinking through and trying to anticipate consequences rather than assuming that a technology is a good thing of itself, in this case, because it wasn't fossil fuel. Christine's work was entitled, and it's there in your booklet, and there are photographic stills in the exhibition in the Science Education Centre. It's called The Abyssal Zone. And the Abyssal Zone is deep ocean floor. And what she was looking at in an exhibition that began over 3 years ago with screens, and then with a full installation at the National Arts Festival 2 years ago, she was looking at the way in which these huge industrial shipping liners go into areas in the ocean in order to mine for rare earth, but in the process burn massive amounts of fossil fuel to propel the liners to get to the industrial sites in the ocean. And then mining in the ocean both disrupts the entire ocean environment, including the ocean floor, at the expense of a range of species. When she began to work on that, I actually hadn't, in my own thinking around water, energy and food, included the ocean, despite that land is such a minute proportion of the Earth as a globe, as a planet. And so that also, I think, has always been a really interesting way to think about what we were doing. Do we privilege life on land, on Earth, over life on Earth? But the other thing that Christine did, and it was really as a result of, it was a moment of opportunism, was think around wearable art. And you are all mindful of T-shirts and slogans on T-shirts. Christine's wearable art is what I'm wearing at present, and it was a leftover screen, print screen of the installation Abyssal Zone, so that what you'll see on my the entire thing is industrial, stand up, is industrial ships and fish being caught in fishing nets and the like. And you know, if you go through to the work and look at it on the screen, you can, on the printing, you can see things like the industrial ships she has actually made from discarded computers, so that at every level she's brought in not only her own sensibility around the environment, but also those who engage with her work. Now, other than this, her skirt and my jacket, there's very little that extends into the public. The second person that we've collaborated with, and Colleen and I worked with before this project, is Haneli Kutsia. And Haneli Kutsia is a South African, a Johannesburg-based artist who moves in her art practice from minute, exquisite sculptures and work on paper using ink particularly, and also watercolour, including on found paper, which is not an unusual of itself, but she goes from that to giant industrial sculptures and has for many years, and including interventions. And the intervention that I want to just note, which we have no credit for, it's absolutely Haneli's inspired understanding, is an informal settlement where she built Gabion walls, which are wire with stones. And I think there's a couple of Gabion wall statues outside. Put the walls into the Yuske River, which runs through Johannesburg, becoming more and more polluted as it discharges beyond the city. The walls collected rubbish, and rubbish in this particular area included everything from dead dogs and other things, and babies' nappies and Coca-Cola bottles, to things like used tyres. But then with the community, she built sculptures along the riverbank for people to play with. And there's a wonderful, maybe a crocodile and maybe not, of used tyres, so that the tyres had a second life, which we know to be durable, and it turned the banks of the Yuske River from being a place that was both full of trash and dangerous to being a playground for children, at the same time as creating its own lesson about how to ensure an enduring and sustainable environment. The third person that we worked with, and we've now worked with him at 3 sites, and he'll be back again later this week to work with the children for Saturday's play show, or play shop, is Mook Lyon. And Mook I actually met through Christine of the Abyssal Zone. He's a Makanda-based mural artist who does public murals with local participants, and that was what Arnold was talking about, the original mural work that stimulated his own research. The whole process that is at the heart of Mookie's practice is to provide skills to people, and therefore to translate an interest in, or a way of filling in time, from graffiti through to an endurable artwork. And for those of you who are part of this university, you will be aware of the murals as you walk along the side of the Science Education Centre. In Johannesburg, we were able to paint the wall that leads into the Origin Centre, which is a big win in terms of the University of Witwatersrand's preference to be very cautious around the environment. And in Dunsane, outside East London, we worked with a group of community artists and young people who wanted to become artists to decorate shipping containers, exploring the themes of water, energy and food. The shipping containers themselves were their studios. And so we went from studios that were rusty or had been painted with house paint and were now peeling to vibrant images of the issues of water, energy and food that we're only just getting round now to analyse ourselves as a source of research information as well as a source of engagement and everyday practice.
Thank you so much. There's quite a lot of work that is being done. Yeah, no, I think my panel have spoken. They have shared experiences, they have shared so much valuable information. So may I then afford you an opportunity, to ask questions. And I don't know how many questions I will take, but yeah. All right.
Wow. Thank you so much for this beautiful conference. It is very fascinating. And I'm still shaking because of the bomb that you created, Walker. Okay, my name is Irene Masuluke. I'm from Wits, doing my PhD there. When the panelists and Walker, you were sharing your experiences with us, something caught my interest. When we allow arts to communicate science, as a researcher, I'm thinking, can we allow arts to translate knowledge? I'm saying this because as researchers, we do conduct research in communities, for publications, for degrees, after getting our degrees, and it's all excitement and we disappear. Some do go back and try and present, but the context is too technical for the communities to consume. So now I'm just thinking at the back of my head, can we also use art to translate knowledge back to the communities after we did research, different kinds of research? Thank you.
Maybe let me take another question. Yeah. Is that fine? Yeah.
Hey, mine is a bit long, I think. It has to be short and direct. Oh, let me do this. Tobela, first we give thanks to the panel and everybody who's in attendance. Maina, Lina, Lesfane, Tabo, Joseph, Paul, Sequela. Sofane ke Sequela. Yeah, here it is. Great. I am very interested. I was actually taken aback by the whole panel. I think the combination and the collaboration. I am all for collaboration, by the way, but I am really interested in the politics of division, subtraction, multiplication, simplicity, like what we learned in primary school. Tlhogo, magetla, sifuba, leleteka, mangwele, lemenwana. Mangwele, lemenwana. So here's the question, just a quick one. First, I need to shout out, give an SO to my favorite theater practitioners. And first is Ola Chris Akinola, actually part of the panel. Exenjak, watseiba, kwera. And then Tsepang Mutichwe, Rhodes University, Gary Kitching, Rhodes University, Kolisi Masilela is in Joburg. I think he collaborated with Words. Who am I forgetting? I think that's about it. But yeah, my study field is performance studies, and what I'm interested in is ritual theater. So I just wanted to, my question is long, let me put it like this. Please, if the panel can simplify it for me, the concept of energy and time, in the sciences, because they said these things are interdisciplinary, intertextual, and they interconnect. Just simplify for me in all disciplines across. Mushad.
Okay, thank you very much. Take the other question here.
My name is Andries Besuidenhout from the University of Fort Hare. Thank you to the panel for, I think, a really, really great overview of different approaches to combining art and science. And I think what is really great about the panel and opening this conference titled Imagining Futures is that what the panel's presented, the way I read the panel, is that using one's imagination is something that happens both in the scientific world, but it's fundamental to artistic expression. All creative expression isn't necessarily artistic, it may be scientific as well. And that the imagination, in a way, is where those connections are made creatively. That science isn't just a hard numbers game. Theorizing is imaginative. It's creative thinking. And operationalizing those theories into concepts and figuring out how to measure them. It's also about the imagination and its creative work. So I think I just appreciate the fact that with our project is on eco-imagining. It's how we use our imagination to think about broader ecological questions. But I mean, in a way, I appreciate how the panels brought together things that we typically see as profoundly different, art and science, and actually showed how the two share a joint interest in using the imagination. Thank you. Comment.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we can tackle the...
Okay, let me just take the one from my lady there from VET, Irene. A while ago, the police cluster at Mankwe here, they approached us at the department. They said juvenile crimes in the communities are on the increase. Vandalism, the young people are vandalizing issues, abusing drugs, Yaope and all of that. So they approached me. So what we did was simple. And I was working on a paper that says that we should play about even serious matters. When we play about serious matters, learning happen unconventionally at homes. Parents raise their children without classrooms. Unconventionally, researchers go out of the classroom. When we're boxed together, it seems as if there's a frenzy to learn. But when we go out in the fields and play, quote and unquote, we seem to learn and gather more research. So we began to write plays that addressed the issues that the police were finding difficult, because they were arresting these young boys and girls and releasing them after a day or two, rearrest them again, release them again. So they were not getting ahead in solving the problem. So I said to them, let's play about this. So we began to write plays that addressed these issues. And the data we got was outstanding. We began to see some of these young boys and girls participating in the drama. And we see them having changes in their lives. Some going back to school, and we began to mentor them, start dramatic clubs in their schools, high schools. And so we see that art can actually explain difficult phenomena and solve the problems of society. I hope that makes sense.
So yeah, I also just have something to add to that. We are really trying to find creative ways to share our research findings with communities. And the one thing that we have found is that art whether it is giving them a reflection journal to write afterwards, or a poem, it doesn't matter. Just any type of way where people can express the emotion that they feel based on the knowledge that you shared about a problem that is about something that they feel personally passionate about. Giving them the emotion is that, or the ability to express emotion through art and through some type of creative outlet is very often the thing that mobilizes into action, that gets people to internalize and to I don't even know the right word, it's completely not my field, but it is something that we have really noticed, and it's something that we try and do with everything that we do in communities, is to give some type of opportunity for creative responses, maybe even designing ideas for interventions, to find a way to mobilize the emotions into something that could become collective action. Does that make sense?
The second question, the one at the back.
I didn't understand the question. So I'll connect to Irene's question and Farina's response and say, like for example, right now we have a big conference, and the question is, where are our participants? Where are the people that we spoke to and engaged with? And in my case, they were invited, but many chose to continue working on the farm and rather send their kids to the Saturday workshop, right? And so finding meaningful ways of co-producing knowledge can come through in these art forms, but I think the impact level of it is also really important. So what do you do also as a researcher so that maybe you ease your sense of guilt and you don't feel like you were doing parachute science or extractive science? And for us, we try to mobilize our resources to also help. So right now, as we speak, the Eco-Imagining Project has helped to install a new borehole at the Ratnang Vegetable Garden, and this is what they were in most of the work, that's what came out most of the time. We need water, we need water, we need water. So how do we go about, helping out with the real problems as well?
Another hands of applause to the panel. I think there is, Graham, you have a burning question. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Let me thank the panel. I think by now we are able to connect the dots. Arts and science, well connected. We had, good ideas. Now I think the comment. Thank you very much for the lovely comment up there, and then we really appreciate. Without any waste of time, thank you to my lovely panel, and we really appreciate all the contributions, sharing. Not everyone shared the information, but you were here to share and then openly so to everyone, and that is very, very commendable. And to all of you, you were good listeners, and you were not sleeping. You made sure that you will stay awake. We didn't bore you, so we really thank you a lot. Thank you so much. Then I'll hand it over. I think Prof. Manderson will then close for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. I do want to move on because I am so just to fill you in, we do want to talk a tiny bit about a book project. So Annalise, please come join me with the books. And so we're going to talk a little bit about this. Willem, please come down the front too. Come down and sit on this and we'll sit together here. And then as soon as this is done, we'll grab a drink and then Chris's group, and you've just heard him, will have his performers performing, which is where he's now disappeared to grab them. So I'm just trying to put my eye. Willem, come sit here and I'll sit with you. And Annalise, are you coming down? Okay. So just while I wait for Annalise to join us, one of the things that we decided in conversation to do here was to put together a book for grade 6, 7 students that would also extend to suit students in early high school. And it was really a continuing conversation that we had been having about how to engage students in STEM subjects and to understand what were sometimes quite complex issues that emerged from talking about the water, energy and food nexus. And so what I'm going to do is ask, so we engaged through Annalise Willem van der Merwe to do some illustrations for us, which became an entire reading book, and which included both text and characters. And I'll talk a bit more in a moment about it, and I realise that what's happening is we're getting the other books, yes, but I'll let Annalise introduce Willem and talk a little bit about the project, then I'll pick up.
Right, thank you very much, Lenore. Yeah, so the one thing I asked her was that we have a book for grades 6 and 7 learners, a story book. And then she said, oh yes, let's do that. And then I said, okay, I have an artist. So years ago, I was doing art with Willem, and he paints beautiful nature scenes and animals, very photo perfect. So I said to Lenore, no, we have to get him. And then Willem said yes. And we started with the book, or Willem started with the book. And the story developed. And it was quite a process to have the book where it is today, which is basically a prototype of the book. So there's the prototype, and it's a real storybook that tells about the challenges that we have as humans, and it's about a boy and then these magical creatures that appear, and tells him the story about food, water and energy. So it touches a lot on the CAPS grade 6 and 7 curriculum. So yes, I think it can really be a help to schools to support those topics which sometimes children find very challenging. And yes.
precede that. Following on from that, and we've just got a few more here, so I can give these to Willem, is that firstly, there is the booklet, and the posters outside in the foyer against the glass derive from that booklet, and there are more posters and more images and banners in the Science Education Centre of these images. In addition, Annelies, who managed to not even mention that in the process, then worked up a teacher's guide, and the teacher's guide is directed towards teachers to use to work through the book, which, although it is itself a full semester curricula, because each page unpacks another issue around the challenges of water, food and energy, including understanding the water cycle, understanding pollution, understanding the concepts of overfishing, understanding what a cell is and that a cell is largely comprised of water and so on. So we ended up with a teacher's guide, which will now hopefully include some of Graham Walker's science experiments in this too. Then we also did a learner's workbook, which will eventually be bigger than this, which is the workbook that students will have in addition to the storybook, so that students will have the storybook, and then with the storybook, both the teachers and the students are able to work through it. So there's a lot of steps to go, and earlier today we were talking about what would it involve to have people from the Department of Education take it up for curricular purposes. It's also able to be broken down in all kinds of ways to encourage the use of this material in other classes as well. And so we've got that in mind, but also today's conversation was around translating it so that it could be used in local languages in schools, not necessarily for the workbook and the teacher's book, but certainly the storybook itself is there for translation. So, but the impetus for this was actually the beauty of the original images that Willem did for us, and on your registration card, your name card, in the top right corner, or from the middle to the top right corner, you will see the meerkat, the bush baby, and the turako bird flying with Mpo, the young boy, flying up above Earth and then beginning to comprehend the challenges on Earth in relation to other things. So, Willem, thank you so much.
My pleasure. I just want to thank, first of all, Annelies and Lenore. Can you all hear me? Yes. Yeah. So I just want to thank Annelies as well as Lenore for providing me this opportunity to share some of my art in what I consider an extremely worthy project, something that is needed to basically, like we said, the issue is engaging young people, engaging their imaginations. So that was my challenge, and I tried my best. I still feel quite inadequate to the task, but basically this is what the idea was, to visually present the different elements and their interrelationships. We spoke about the importance of art. Now, I wouldn't call myself the best artist in the country, but I do try, and there are so many ways in which we can use visual imagery to more easily convey quite complicated scientific concepts. So that you can present in a coordinated whole what you want the students to understand. And this is still my challenge. I still don't know how well I've risen up to this challenge. But I think we have now a workable little book. I'd be very happy if this project can go further. It's vital to get the new generations. These problems are going to continue in the future, and we adults, even we old people, we need to stay involved. We can't make this an issue just that the young people have to solve on their own. So that is basically my goal with this book. So we'll have to see what goes from here, but I'd be very happy if we can have a book that we can actually distribute among especially rural schools. We are now here together and we got this fancy auditorium and we got all this electronic equipment. But many of the rural schools where these children have to be taught have only the most rudimentary kinds of materials that they can use and equipment that they can use. So I just want to say this. So this is basically was my goal to be able to even convey even to people in simple rural schools issues of global import. And it's true, people have their local communities and the issues that they have there that they need to be aware of and they need problems that they need to solve. But even so today, we do live in a world which is incredibly interconnected. So even though the children of rural South African schools may not care much about the glaciers in Antarctica, they can have some idea about issues relating to the South Pole, relating to the North Pole. In that shot of our protagonists and the animals in space, we are, the world isn't really divided up into little pieces. It's a whole, it's a single whole. We humanity, we are a whole. We need to remember we are players in our local environment, in our local community, but at the same stage we also play on a global scale with communication technologies. Even rural people today have their cell phones, they have connection, they can get information from all over the world. So that was another one of my goals, to give even these rural children a view of what is going on the planet as a whole. And also to make them not feel despondent. The big thing is we must not place so many problems on the children's shoulders that they feel inadequate. We must present a positive message at the end. Individual agency, the individual, as lowly as he may feel, you still have a voice, you still have a role to play, you still can make a positive difference. So I'm hoping I conveyed that as well. It's not a doom and gloom book. It's overall, I think, quite a positive book. Okay, thank you very much. And once again, thanks to Annelies and Lenore. Okay.
At the registration table, hopefully, we'll have a few copies of books for people to have a look through. We haven't done enough for everybody at the conference, not the least of which is because we didn't have everybody registering in advance to print enough copies of the books. And what we do want to do is to get these out to teachers working with students in order to road test the volume and the guide and the teacher's workbook and so on. The other thing that relates to the book is that the characters in the book then inspired Ola Chris to pick it up with his performing arts students, and over reception nibbles, that will be the performance that's happening. Chris is not here now, so I think he nicked out. He's still here. Okay, so in any case, let us break now. I will reconvene in the morning back at the university, at the Science Education Centre, but for now, reception and performance. Thank you. No, wait on. Sorry, it turns out the performance is actually happening in here. So, and what I don't know is when it's happening. Now, Right now, not now.
Okay. Thanks for coming. Yeah.
See you tomorrow morning.
Okay, great.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, I understand I've put undue pressure on people's bladders, so we'll have a 5-minute break before the next performance, and then there will be reception. This doesn't go off?
I think they turn it off.
Oh, okay.
I forgot to say.
4. Be careful not to mess it out. 3, 2. Are you sure you're seated? One.
Water, energy, food. 3 essentials, deeply connected, yet somehow out of balance. Why do I feel like these 3 are gossiping about each other behind the scenes?
We do not gossip, we flow.
So you are water?
Yes, the thing you open and assume will come out.
Oh, I see.
Yes, but you only respect me when I disappear, or when I enter your living room uninvited.
Fair.
I don't do slow matters.
And you are?
Everything. You're welcome. Lights? Me. Wi-Fi? Me. Air conditioning? In this very room? Me. So, yabona lo mhlangano ngiyakuyenzeke ngaphandle kwami.
Oh, relax. If I do not do none of you are thinking clear.
Excuse me?
Yes. When was the last time you made a good decision?
Okay. So we have confidence, hydration, and lunch. Why do people treat you like separate departments?
Because it is easier to budget us separately.
Yes, humans love spreadsheets. They do. You forget that roots do not read spreadsheets.
How? So what is really the problem here?
You pollute me. And then you start creating some solutions for what you've broken.
You bend the issues and add surprise when the planet get warm. You demand strawberries in winter and wonders why the system are stressed.
So you're saying we're dramatic?
No, you are reactive. There's a difference.
You wait for them before remembering rivers exist.
You wait for empty shells before asking where the soil comes from.
But we are innovative. Hydro, solar, wind.
Yes, finally. Panels catching sunlight like professional. Winds, turbines, doing elegant slow balance.
Helan, giving 10 spinning turbines without smoke.
The farmers learn to grow without stripping the land back. We're not here to scare anyone.
We are here to remind you.
Yes, you are not in the system. You do not manage the system from above.
Oh, so now what do we do?
Let me tell you, protect sources before crisis.
Transaction before collapse. Yes. Grow wisely, waste less, and share fairly.
It sounds simple.
It is simple.
It is not easy, man.
There is a difference.
I feed the food.
I move the water. And I feed the body. And the body builds the city.
The city demands more energy.
Serious?
Okay, so you are not 3.
We are one cycle.
Okay. And we are the only species that can read the manual and still press the wrong buttons.
Yes, people do not ride over philosophy. They ride over brain.
I see. But, my dear, you can also fix it.
You can redesign it. You can respect it.
Okay.
Yes, that's it.
Water, energy, check. Food. Not competitors. Not separate. One system and one chance to get it right. The cycle
is watching.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was a show by the S Blog crew, and we'd like to say thank you.
People, drinks and snacks are outside waiting for you. Really.